Hello everyone and welcome to Up the Turnpike, your source for New York Islanders content both here on YouTube and over on Patreon, where we have our podcast that we record twice a week. That's patreon.com/uptheturnpike. In this video, we're going over the best and worst moves made by Lou Lamoriello as GM of the New York Islanders. As you're, I assume, aware at this point, Lou Lamoriello's contract was not extended by the Islanders, and so we can bookend his career as Islanders GM and say definitively what were the best and worst moves made by him. Now, with any such list or any content like this, the results, i.e. whatever I'm about to bring up, are wildly subjective. I get that your list is probably going to look different than mine, although I think we might align on quite a few items here. We'll see as we go through. So remember that when you put the comments below, don't attack my personality or this stupid hair. That's why you made this stupid picks. Just be constructive with your criticism, please. Second little bit of housekeeping when it comes to this type of content, and this one specifically, I haven't ranked any of these. So if I bring something up at the top, it's not necessarily because I ranked it the number one worst thing he's ever done or the number one worst thing or best thing he's ever done. It's just the first thing that came out of my head when I thought about the positives and the negatives. And third bit of housekeeping, I'm still getting over a cold, so I'm going to sound a little stuffy, and I might flub some syllables just because my nose is... Anyways, I'm not going to be able to pronounce certain things, but I'm going to do my best. Bow. Housekeeping, done. Let's get to it. We're going to alternate here from best and worst as we go through. I've got 5 bests and 5 worsts. Hopefully, they're pretty much the same as yours. Anyways, first best one, hiring Barry Trotz. I don't think that's going to be a shocker to anyone, and I'm pretty sure on all of our lists, the number one best thing that Lou Lamoriello ever did as GM of the New York Islanders is hiring Barry Trotz. We remember not only just the first year, right, when he took over, he being Barry Trotz, he inherited a squad that didn't have John Tavares, had really, really young Matthew Barzal, although promising first season in the NHL, and had no other depth. Lou Lamoriello brought in a bunch of what seemed at the time random guys to fill in bottom 6 roles, but it worked. That first year, .628 win percentage. And then he also finished by winning a round in the playoffs that season. That was insane. And through his Islander tenure, a .587 wins percentage for Barry Trotz, or they're calling it a points percentage here, for Barry Trotz as a head coach for the New York Islanders. That points percentage is the second best in Islanders history, or I should say his win percentage is the second best in Islanders history. Barry's got a .587. Al Arbour has a .613. Now I know some of you looking at this list are probably going to point out that Patrick Roy is sitting at a .608, but because he's not technically done as head coach of the New York Islanders, that doesn't necessarily count. But it's obvious that the number one best thing that Lou Lamoriello ever did for this franchise was hire Barry Trotz, and I really don't think that's a hot take. The worst thing, or the first worst thing that comes to my mind, was the Devon Toews trade. Now, I know that he needed to make a trade because of the cap situation. I absolutely know that, and I've forgiven him for the Devon Toews trade. I get it. He ended up kind of redeeming himself in the end with those 2 second-round picks. Ended up drafting Trotz, which allowed him to acquire Bo Horvat, also allowed him to trade away Andrew Ladd. So, there were positives from it, but giving up a player like Devon Toews really hurts. It really hurt, and it still kind of hurts. Again, I forgive him. I understand why it happened, but still, it's obvious the worst thing that happened was having to trade Devon Toews. The second best thing is, I'm going to say trading, or the return we got for Brock Nelson. I'm going to bring it up here. So we send Brock Nelson, Williams full over to the Colorado Avalanche. We get Callum Ritchie, which was the number one prospect in the Colorado Avalanche system and is doing phenomenally in the playoffs. Last I saw, he had 15 points in 12 games. I'm not sure they're playing today, but either way, leading the way for Oshawa. We get Shillington, but we flip almost instantaneously for future considerations. That's going to be interesting with the Ducks, what that future consideration might be. And then we get a conditional third in 2028, whatever. But it's really the conditional first-round pick in 2026. It's going to be a first-round pick. It just depends which one we're going to get. So it's going to be interesting. We get a first-round pick, and we get Callum Ritchie, who's a phenomenal prospect in return for what is arguably a rental in Brock Nelson. Now, they could very well re-sign him, but it's still kind of a rental getting Brock Nelson or for the Colorado Avalanche. And we get two huge pieces in again, Ritchie and a first. Now, Lou had to make that trade because Brock Nelson didn't want to re-sign, but still he did well. That is another positive. One of the best things he's done. The second worst thing he's done is Pierre Engvall's contract. I still can't believe that we signed Pierre Engvall to a 7-year contract after an 18-game sample. Now, I understand that Lou Lamoriello was GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he saw him play, but we have him here for 18 games. I was bringing up both years, but it's really this one. 9 points in 18 games, and he's like, you know what? Re-up that. We have to have that on lockdown for another 7 years. So dumb. It's so dumb. I get that the cap hit isn't huge, right? It's $3 million for Pierre Engvall. That's not the number, the price, I guess, isn't necessarily going to kill us going forward, and we can buy that out and be okay. It's just silly. It's just a silly thing to do. Why would you do that? There's no reason to have to give him $3 million over 7 years because he scored 9 points in 18 games. Get out of here. There's no way you can't say that he could have got $3 million over 3 years. That was really dumb, and now we're stuck. The third best thing that Lou Lamoriello did was acquiring Bo Horvat. And to me, there's two layers to that. Not only do you get Bo Horvat, who's a top-line player and a top-line center, who can score arguably 40 goals. He can definitely score 30. That's not a problem. It's 40, that's arguable. But still, do that, win a crap ton of face-offs, and just play generally on the first line. But it also allows the Islanders to put Matthew Barzal on the wing. And to me, that has always been a huge benefit because I've always believed that Matthew Barzal was a better center than he was, a better winger than he was a center. I just much prefer him playing on the wing than playing down the middle. He's just not that great defensively. Sure, he can play center, and he's certainly fast, but I think his creativity and speed are better used on the wing where we don't have to rely on his defensive frailties. And that's okay. That's not me taking a shot at Barzal. It's okay to not be good defensively. I'm also not good defensively. I get it. But we can maximize his good assets while minimizing his bad ones by putting him on the wing. So acquiring Bo Horvat allowed us to do that. So good job by Lou. And we trade Anthony Beauvillier, which was a throwaway. We trade Aotaratu, which they have wildly misused in Vancouver. So that has been a win for us as well. The third worst thing that Lou Lamoriello did, and we're going back to contracts here, is Scott Mayfield. I get that he was the number one right-handed defenseman on the market at that time in free agency, but there's no reason to give Scott Mayfield 7 years, 4 years of a full no trade clause at $3.5 million. I get it. The number itself, the cap hit, is low. Fine. I get that. But there's no way. And then we have him healthy scratched for most, maybe not most, but a decent part of the season because he's just not that good enough. He's just not good enough to play in the system that we want to use him for. Maybe in a different system, he's much, much better. But in the system we're trying to use, and in today's NHL, after he broke Nikita Kucherov's rib, he's just not as useful anymore, which is sad, but that's the reality of the situation. But we have him signed for 5 more years after this. That's insane. Again, we can get out of that. Buyout is digestible and such, but it's just a silly move that didn't need to be made at all whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. The fourth best thing that Lou Lamoriello did was acquire Robin Lehner. Now, I know his career has taken a dramatic turn since leaving the New York Islanders, but when he was here, he was lights out, as you all know, obviously. But like that one season he was here, won 25 of 43 games, finished third in the Vezina that season with a .930 save percentage and a .213. We sometimes forget just how friggin' good he was that year. He was in friggin' insane. It was wild. Now remember, the year before that, a .908 through a 1. He looked done. At 26 years old, he looked done. Comes to the island. He and Lou and Mitch Korn and Barry Trotz fix him instantaneously. Wild stuff. Helped turn the franchise around. Helped turn his own career around. Sadly, Lou decided he needed Semyon Varlamov, which in and of itself wasn't a bad move. Like, Semyon Varlamov has been a good goalie for the Islanders. It's just the impact that Robin Lehner had on the team and the franchise and the fans was massive. For a player who's only around for 46 games played, insane stuff. A hell of a pickup. Paid him bargain bin money to get Vezina caliber goaltending. That was an epic move by Lou Lamoriello. The fourth worst thing, in my mind, that Lou has done is Derick Brassard. I don't know why this is the one that comes to my mind, but I'm sure you're going to all say there's something different, and that's totally fine. But this one kind of sticks in my jaw because I remember the Derick Brassard era, or year, I should say, and it wasn't great. Like, you can look back at his time with the New York Islanders and say, let me just bring it up here, switch the screen over. Derick Brassard scored 32 points in 66 games. Not awful, I suppose, but he was brought in to play third line center to take over for Valtteri Filppula, who played very, very well on the third line. But Derick Brassard did not. He scored 45 of his points in a 12-game sample when he played on the second line. They had to call him up to play on the second line. I shouldn't say call up, but they bumped him up to the second line when there were injuries, where he scored 15 points in 12 games. That's 46% of his production scored in those 12 games. The rest of the season, the rest of those, we said 12? 54 games, he scored another 16 points or whatever the hell it is. I can't do quick math. He just wasn't effective. And not only was he not productive, but he just wasn't great enough defensively. At that point of his career, he was no longer a shutdown center. He was maybe a third line winger, right? Someone who can play 10 to 12 minutes and be okay. He wasn't the guy we needed. And his failure, I'm going to call it, with the New York Islanders forced Lou Lamoriello to go and acquire Jean-Gabriel Pageau and spend the assets that he did, which was a win. Jean-Gabriel Pageau was a great pickup by the Islanders, and I'm fine with the price that they paid to acquire him. But that happened because Lou tried to go bargain bin shopping again with Derick Brassard and failed massively. And to me, that was a big miss. He should have tried to acquire someone there and then. Maybe he tried to and couldn't. But going for Derick Brassard just wasn't the play, in my opinion. My last win for Lou Lamoriello is the Alex Romanov trade. I have loved this trade since the day he made it. So he sends a first-round pick, 13th overall, to the Montreal Canadiens, who then subsequently flip it to the Chicago Blackhawks in the Kirby Dach move. Anyways, what we get back for that pick is Alex Romanov and a 2022 fourth-round pick. That fourth-round pick we used to select Isaiah George. Excellent. So we get Alex Romanov and Isaiah George for a first-round pick, which was used by Chicago to draft Frank Nazar III. Fine player for sure, just starting to make his steps in the NHL. But you're sending a first-round pick that we weren't going to use, or we weren't going to have, like the player in the NHL for 3 years, to get a guy in Romanov who's I would argue, a top pair defenseman, at the very least a top four defenseman, and a guy who can play second pair in Isaiah George. That's a massive win. Excellent, excellent trade by Lou Lamoriello. To me, this is one of his better moves. You might have something else, and that's totally fine. Let me know in the comments below. The final worst thing that Lou Lamoriello did as a New York Islander GM, and I'm sure it's going to be the same thing on your books, is not trading Kyle Palmieri. I will not understand why the hell we didn't do that. Kyle Palmieri's value was never going to be higher than at the 2025, let's call it, NHL trade deadline. It just was never going to be higher than that. Remember, Kyle Palmieri goes into the deadline as a 24 goal scorer, 20-ish goal scorer, on pace for 25, scoring 50-ish points, like on pace for 50 points. That was going to get you arguably a first, arguably, at the very least, a second-round pick plus. While that doesn't help the team instantaneously, it doesn't, and Lou's right when he says that. You won't get anything that's going to help you today. But you didn't really get anything to help you today in the Brock Nelson trade either. I understand Callum Ritchie's very close to the NHL, probably even just next year. You could bring in the assets that you could bring in assets for Kyle Palmieri, let's say a second plus, or even a first, let's just say, argue with that, and use said assets to do that, to bring in a player who's ready now or ready tomorrow type of thing. It seems so close-minded to just say, I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to get this today. You could do the next step and you could work a little bit harder to get, I shouldn't say it that way. I'm sure he's worked hard. He's worked very hard. It really seems close-minded to just not have the foresight to say, I'm not going to go and take that, use these assets and make something else out of it. It really just seems dumb. And now the Islanders are stuck with a guy who wants to play here. And if he signs a decent contract, it'll be fine to keep. But we could have got more for a guy that we probably could have found in free agency, whether it's literally Kyle Palmieri or someone like him. We could have found that in free agency next year and spent the same amount of money, but we would have had the assets as well. So to me, that's a huge loss, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Those are my 5 best and 5 worst Lou Lamoriello moves as a New York Islanders GM. Again, just to redefine, best moves, Barry Trotz, Nelson trade, Horvat trade, Robin Lehner, Romanov trade. 5 worst things, Devon Toews trade, Engvall contract, Mayfield contract, Derick Brassard, and not trading Kyle Palmieri. Let me know what yours are in the comments below. I'm sure that we're going to have some differences here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for following. Definitely hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us grow the channel, reach more Islanders fans. And if you've already done all those things, thank you, thank you, thank you.